Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure you had a very busy day scheduled, so we really appreciate you coming and making time to listen to our speakers today. It's a very interesting topic, Agile and Audit, so I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Those who don't know me, I am Rizwana Ali, and I'm one of the vice chairs for the New South Wales chapter. I've also got here with me Chris and Charlie representing the chapter. On behalf of the chapter, we'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsor today, EY, for this beautiful venue and for organizing everything for us. Charlie is here from EY. He wears two hats today, the chapter chair and the EY sponsor. So welcome everyone. Before we go to the more interesting part of our day, which is the topic area, I have three quick announcements to make, as we always do. So the first one, 9th of November, something to remember, the date, Internal Audit Forum. So please come and join us. It is going to give you the unique opportunity to understand the technical aspects and the management issues of operations and operations of the new local councils, local governments, structure, internal audit, and other governance arrangements that are. 15th November is the second one to remember. Financial Services Internal Audit Conference. Those who work in the financial sector, like myself, we look forward for this conference throughout the year. Last year it was a huge sold. It was sold out. It was very, very popular. So this year we got a bigger venue. So please join us. It will give us the we've got excellent speakers, and we'll hear from internal audit professionals and risk professionals of the day. Third one is CGAP. iia Global has been very generous, and until 31st of October, if you are interested to do CGAP exam, which is a certified government exam, it is actually free. So you save, if you're a member, US 115. If you're not a member, US 230. So it's a unique opportunity. Take advantage of it if it's something of interest. The other thing we'd like to mention is we, as New South Wales chapter, have an app now. So if you have used it, please give us some feedback. We'd like to improve it. So your feedback is very much appreciated. That is all about announcements. So we're really looking forward to listening to Guy Herbert. He's a risk futurist. It's a title that is new to me. He works for Atlassian. Guy has over 20 years working in IT and technology across the telecom, finance, pharmaceutical, and software industries. He doesn't look it. He looks really young. He has managed risk compliance, audit, and technical delivery teams during this time. Guy has been thinking of better ways of Atlassian to manage IT risk and compliance since September 2013. Atlassian is an Australian company, those of us who don't know about it. It started 15 years ago, and it builds software to help teams work together. You are familiar with probably its softwares like Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, Bamboo, Stride, and HipChat. So that is Guy. We're looking forward to it. Thank you, Guy. We also have two other speakers that we'll hear from at the panel level later on. I'm introducing them. Andrew McKay, IT leader, Allianz Australia. Andrew has 15 years experience across all three lines of defense within telecoms and finance industry. His focus areas are IT, project, and data. He's currently implementing data-driven audit techniques and enterprise risk analytics for Allianz Australia. Very interesting stuff. Also, we've got Courtney Fox, Head of Internal Audit from Tyro Payments. Courtney is an internal auditor specializing in IT and financial services. Sides of the fence as both an in-house internal auditor and as an outsourced provider with prior experience in a number of industries, including health, government, education, and non-profit sectors. Courtney joined Tyro Payments only in September this year as the head of internal audit. Tyro is an Australian fintech company. It was much talked about recently because in 2015, Tyro became an authorized deposit-taking institution and last year launched the lending and deposit products with the aim of making a major difference for the Australian SME community. So welcome all, and I hope you have a great time today. Thank you so much.
Right, so we have had a couple of technical difficulties, and so I'm not using my laptop, so if anything goes horribly wrong, it's their fault. Okay. All right, risk futurist, what does that mean? I think of new ways of how we can manage risk and compliance for Atlassian. I also think about how we can help our customers use our tools to be able to do the same sort of thing. A lot of the things that I think about and the ways we think about risk and compliance and controls and being able to report on those aren't limited to our tools. You can use anything to do that. So I like to just think about how we can make it better. Besides that, I actually have a real job. So I do IT risk and compliance for Atlassian. So I worry about the things that would go wrong with our IT systems. I have to do SOX compliance control checks and make sure that we're actually going to report correct financial statement information. We've got external auditors. Ernst & Young are our external auditors, and so a lot of the stuff that I talk about within our world has actually been checked by our external auditors, and we've got a pretty good help on our SOX audit. All right, this is not a presentation on how to audit Agile projects. I think there's been a lot of information out there about how to audit Agile projects and what they are, etc. What I want to focus on more is how Agile can be used within the internal audit function to be able to potentially deliver a better, more adaptable product. So a little bit more about Atlassian. We make lots of products, but they are really focused on team collaboration. We see the future of work as being teams working together. You look at all of the major advances in medicine, in science, across the technology industries, they're not made by the lone genius. They're made by teams. And so we provide tools to be able to help those teams work better together. Now, I think that's particularly relevant for internal audit because we all operate in teams. We have 5 company values, opening company, no BS, etc. We have about 90,000 customers. These are enterprise customers. We have 200,000 plus smaller customers. We do cloud and server. We are US listed, so as I said, we've got software requirements. We have customers around the globe across lots and lots of different industries. There's so many different companies that use us. It's really cool. NASA holds all of their rocket designs in one of our products. That just makes me quite thrilled. One of the things that's interesting about our company, open by default, share information internally as a default, which is really confronting when you first come to the company because you are used to, I think about my document, I would work on the document, I'd make sure it was up to a certain stage and then I would share it. Our organisation has an intranet and that's where pretty much all of our information is stored. It's open. So it's shared from the get-go, which is really quite confronting when you join. But once you get used to the idea, it actually makes it a lot easier to get feedback and people input ideas into your ideas. And I personally have found that my idea is the best idea until somebody else looks at it and goes, what about this? And I go, yeah, okay. And then you get a better idea. Okay. As an organisation, we love Agile. But so do other organisations. So this is the Atlassian internal view about why we love Agile. But then this is from Harvard Business Review. Reduces time to market, you get a better quality output, you get faster feedback. I think that's the really, really important piece. And that's where it relates to internal audit. You get feedback from your customer, from the end user of your product faster. You can then iterate on that and you come up with a better end product. You think about what is the product that internal audit delivers? For me, it was always the audit report at the end. But what does the customer actually want? They want to know whether their risks are being managed. What's their control stats? So that's the information that they're really seeking from us. And that happens at the lowest level in the organisation, right through the board. People want to know, how am I control stacking up? Am I doing it the right way? Am I managing my business? Agile has a manifesto. I like a good manifesto. Viva la revolution. This is the original Agile manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. For me, to turn that into how it works for us, think of it as working control status. What is the control status in your business at a point in time over an amazing report at the end of the job? Customer collaboration, working with your businesses, getting their buy-in in what you're doing, why you're doing it. Instead of, I think about, I was previously at Macquarie Bank. I think about the times that we would have negotiating the scope of the audit, and then sometimes the months of negotiating the report at the end of the audit. Whereas if the audits where it really worked well was when we had a high degree of interaction and collaboration. The next one, responding to change over following a plan. Who here has a 3-year audit plan? I'm surprised at the people who don't. Okay? But I think that most organisations do have a 3-year audit plan, and it makes sure that you're covering all of the businesses and you're on a cycle. How often do you actually follow that plan right through the end? For me, it was never. I would be lucky to get to the end of the year before I had to change the plan. Agile takes that as a key piece of it. Change your plan. Change as the world changes. Change as your business changes. Now, caveat on the bottom, it's not we don't do processing tools. We don't do documentation. We don't negotiate contracts. It's just that we value the things on the left more than the things on the right. When I often go to Agile presentations, they talk about the myth of there's no documentation. If your Agile organisation is not doing documentation, then they're really not doing Agile the way they should be. Because people need to know what they're working on. You need to be able to report on the status. You need to be able to show where you're up to. So that's Agile in the manifesto. For me, the biggest shift with this is cultural. Getting people in the organisation to buy into Agile, to make the move, is really, really difficult, and it's a cultural shift. The first thing that I put down is get stuff done. When I joined Atlassian, the person that I was working for, the CIO, said, this organisation is a do-ocracy. You will get rewarded for doing things. That was quite confronting for me. I had previously worked in organisations who run large teams and told people to do stuff. So me doing something was telling people to do stuff. I actually had to do stuff myself, and that was fairly difficult. So I would say, we should do this. And one of the things that we had to do was a workflow for our HR people, because we weren't tracking contractors coming into the organisation. And I said, we really need a workflow to manage that. And they said, yes, we do. And it was then, Guy, go and build this for us. I was like, okay. And so I had to do something. And for me, it was great because I actually learned more about the process. I learned how it worked. I learned what was going wrong in the process. And we came up with a better solution. They still use that solution about 3.5 years later. For a lot of the work in an agile environment, the absolute end goal is not really clear. And you'll need to deal with ambiguity. That can be difficult. They're used to, I do an audit report and this is what the end looks like. If you change that through the process, it's actually fairly difficult. And some people deal with that better than others. Accountability and ownership. You will drive this down more in your organisation. In a development environment, paired programming, two programmers working together, this is the ownership level. It's not at the team lead, it's not at the manager, it's down at the person doing it. So you really want to get ownership and accountability within your teams, with the people who are doing the work. They have to understand why they're doing it. Tie it back to the control status and being able to show that really helps people buy into it. But if your organisations don't fit well with this, then it's a really big cultural shift. You will have to delegate better. People will be making decisions at the lower level. I'll talk about some of the roadblocks and what I describe as the curly bit at the end. But that can be difficult. Benefits that I like about it is you really get to give feedback to the customer quickly about their controls, about their environment. The flip side is they can very quickly give you feedback on what they think of your process and your review. So if you're in a position where you want to make your customer happy, but you need to deliver bad news, then being able to do that trade-off is something that can be difficult. So being able to deliver those messages within your organisation to your customers will be a challenge. The Agile process is often run as sprints, and so we talk about a 2-week sprint, and at the end of a 2-week sprint, you do a retrospective, and you go, what have we learned as part of that sprint? The idea being that you take that into your next sprint. Now, when people think about, hang on a second, I'm doing sprint, that's not sustainable. One of the things about Agile is that you need to work in a way that is sustainable. So your teams, you need to manage this, you need to manage the work. So being able to look at your retrospectives at the end of that period, and some people run longer sprints than that, but being able to look at the end of a 2-week period and go, all right, we said we were going to review 20 controls and we reviewed 15. What did we learn? If you do your next sprint and you go, well, we'll review 20 controls and you do 15 again, you haven't learned anything. Being able to say, actually, what we do get through is about 15 controls, so we'll put 15 controls in the next sprint. Or our customers can't handle the interaction. There's too many of us here in a small space, we need to back up. Being able to, you need to learn from those retrospectives. And then change the process in So everybody goes, cool, Agile's a new buzzword, let's go for it, let's go. Number of organisations where I've seen there's a waterfall plan to implement the Agile methodology. Big project plan, and we go, all right, these are all the teams that we're going to do it across, and this is how we're going to implement it. It's all top-down driven. It tends to not work that way. What I found works quite well is try it with a team or a business unit. Start small. Learn from that. Use Agile to implement Agile. You need to agree your reporting framework and your format up front. You need to get your customer across what you want. You also need to get the board, senior management to buy into this idea as well. One of the things that we've done as an organisation is we use a dashboard of our controls, and that's real time. So I've got people doing testing at the moment, and if they do the results of the test, that dashboard will update today. And open by default, anybody across the company can see the results of that testing. The customer can see it, the manager can see it, my manager can see it, so they can see the progress. So we report on the progress, we report on the status, we report on what hasn't been done, the good things, the bad things. You need to define what success looks like. But you need to be able to change that. Because you'll get feedback from your customers. No, that doesn't help you. Yes, this does help me. Can you do more of that? You also need to define, and this is really important, it comes from the software world, about what constitutes done. When you've finished a test and you have a result, is that done? Is it when you've reported the results? Is it when you've got agreement on the final result? Being able to say, this is the end of the sprint, that work has been completed. Waiting for documentation from the customer to be able to prove that the control's working means that your test isn't done. And you need to be able to say, okay, well that didn't get done during that sprint. What did we learn? We learned that actually we need to ask the customer earlier for their information. Or we need to make it easier for them to give us information. You also need to think about what are all of the tests you're going to do and how you're going to track that. Because a lot of this information, you start going, all right, well, we'll do an audit plan and it'll be this big, and then you start going, all right, these are all the tests, and you start putting those out in weeks. But you need to have a nice way of being able to list all of those and think of it as, this is my backlog of work. It will change. That's one of the things we really pick up from the software projects is, you go, yes, I'm doing that piece of work, and then 2 weeks later you go, actually it didn't work. And so my backlog changes. My customer gives me feedback that says, actually this control is something that I'm really worried about, can you look at it? And you then take that in, and that changes which piece of work you're doing. People manage this in Excel, they manage it, there's lots of different tools out there to help you manage that, but it's something you're going to have to stay on top of. The other thing is, who are all the other stakeholders and interested parties? Because once you start putting this information on the dashboard and sharing it across the company, you'd be really surprised who is interested in the output. All right. I talk about the roadblocks or what will bring me undone. You say you want to get stuff done. It's quite hard in organisations when you're working with a team of people who are used to, I don't really need to report on anything every week. Daily stand-ups really brings this out. So if you have to stand up at 10 o'clock every morning with your team and say what you did yesterday, and what you're going to do today, and what are the things that are stopping you, it gets quite confronting for people who don't really do much. So if you've made no progress on something yesterday because things got in the way, having to stand up and go, really? Didn't get much done yesterday. As a leader in that space, it's really useful. But it can also be quite confronting because as a leader, often you're leading people, and so you're going, well, what did I actually do yesterday? And I think about some of the times when I was managing teams, and I sort of felt like all I did was flip from one thing to the other and didn't actually get anything done. And so if I was standing in a stand-up, I think I'd be going, well, yeah, I didn't do much yesterday. Hopefully I'll do something today. If you're selling this to people, do you have a compelling story? Do you have a reason why you're doing it? What's the reason that you're going to give to your organisation? Scheduling. When we think about the teams, the businesses that you're interacting with, think about how you would deal with changing that schedule, changing that set of tests. How responsive is the customer going to be to you wanting to change something? I can remember trying to reschedule audits and going, yeah, we want to move that by a month, and getting all sorts of pushback from the organisation about moving. Just think if you're doing that all the time, how does that work with your organisation? With some teams we look at, yes, you're aligned with the business, and so the pieces of that business change schedule, and that's okay. But what happens if your team is across the whole business? And you're going, okay, well, this isn't ready, we should change, or something over there is more important, we should change. How will your organisation respond to that change? Being able to integrate that with the business, being able to give the business the feedback, being able to get the information from the business. If your business isn't really tied to you doing this, it's really hard. The other thing is, some of your business units are going to be agile thinking. Others are going to be waterfall. They think in projects. The businesses where it's operational will tend to be more agile. Being able to align with those businesses is really important. The hard part. Distributed decision making. Letting people at the role level within your team make a decision about the status of a control and being able to call that as ineffective. How does that sit with you as a leader? We also talk about self-organising teams. Recently doing some work with a large organisation, and they talked about, okay, we're going to put Agile in here. So we need to have really clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and we need to identify who's the Scrum Master. They're using Scrum as their Agile methodology. And it's sort of like, no, it's meant to be self-organising teams. Get the team to work out who's the best Scrum Master. They'll know. Get them to work it out. Some teams, and this comes back to that, that delegation, the accountability and ownership. Some teams handle it really well. People go, yep, we can do this. Other teams is like, I want the other person to do that. Flexibility. Your organisation will need to be flexible to do this. If you're used to a traditional approach, trying to get people to think this way can be hard. When you do an audit, you will look at the controls. You go in, you think about risks, you think about the controls, you talk to the business about the controls, you talk about the level where the people are operating the control, and you come up with a conclusion. You write your report, and then all of a sudden out comes the hidden control. Oh yes, but we didn't tell you about this control that makes it okay. doesn't work in this environment because you've already recorded the status. The status has gone out to everyone. I think that's a two-edged sword because the hidden control often isn't really control, it's just made up on the spot. Looking at the control status at an individual at each of the control levels is great for status reporting, but being able to put it together to get the overall result, that's where it gets more difficult from an agile perspective. Being able to take that information and go, all right, yeah, the business is well controlled, the risk is managed. It's harder. But you've got the information, and the information is real time, so you can actually. The other piece is you sort of got to give up a bit of control over the process. You need to let it run. For the more senior people in the organisation, that's really hard. Because you're used to a centralised model of the manager knows best. Being able to say, actually, I'm going to let that process go. I'm going to let the team change that. I'm going to let them make it up with a fly. That can be really hard for people in that manager level to do. So I'm going to leave it with a picture of implementing Agile. We often think about the way that we deliver an audit report. It's the top one. Until the report, the end of the report, that's when you get something useful. With Agile, you're giving the customer something useful right at the start. Now, the beautiful part about this is you can actually stop partway through the process if the customer has what they need. Who here has killed an audit partway through because either it was really good or really bad? Few hands. Anybody killed one because it was really good? Well done. That's really unusual. I've killed audits that the customer was just not bad. You went out there and you looked at the controls and you just go, no, this is not the right place. You need help more than you needed an audit report saying how bad things are. And we stopped. The customer had what they needed. They needed the scooter. They didn't need the car. So we've got the panel next, so I won't do questions now, but we'll.
Yes, thank you, Guy. That was a great talk. If we can just invite Courtney and Andrew to come join us on the panel now, be happy to take questions as we go through, but also to have any specific questions for specific areas, whether relating to Guy's experience or Andrew's. I'm actually going to share a mic with this one, so she can also go through and take questions from the floor. So just to recap then, for me, the takeaways, Guy, are really around the manifesto itself being quite powerful in understanding what Agile is and what it isn't. And I think we've certainly debunked that idea that there are no controls, so you can't be audited, which is good. The real challenge, though, is that cultural shift over into auditors. I think we've been used to a waterfall approach, and perhaps we find that a little more challenging to ask ourselves what more we could do, and particularly around the use of Agile in terms of defining our outcomes. We've been quite used to delivering the car and maybe if you have a 3-year plan, you might be waiting a couple of years or so to get your report on that specific area. That move towards more of a dashboard approach is really a call to action for me, and I think we need that call to action as a profession to say that real value add is not in making the customer wait, it's in bringing forward our outcomes and our deliverables to make sure that fit for purpose. So without further ado, I'm going to step in some questions. We'll just take these as we go through. So starting with you, perhaps, Guy, why do you think that Agile is, from your point of view, is important for internal audit as a profession?
Okay. Do I need the mic? Yeah, I need it. Yeah, cool. Okay, sorry guys. Look, businesses are changing. The world is changing faster than it's ever changed. We need to be able to support our businesses in that change. I think that a lot of businesses are recognising that they need to move to Agile. You look at a lot of large organisations are saying we need to be Agile across the business, and I think that internal audit needs to move with that. We need to be there helping the business, giving them real-time information, giving them the feedback, taking their feedback as well, and helping them. And I think Agile is a way that we can do it faster.
Probably just to add to your point on relevancy, if you're running an audit that's going to last 6 months or thereabouts, why are we waiting that long to actually deliver results to our key stakeholders? I think if we can deliver a bit more relevant, to deliver our messages sooner, so the business can start implementing our recommendations on a more timely basis, that's a better outcome for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I guess gone are the days of the paper process that takes all day to get approval for something. Things are happening real time, quicker and quicker, as Guy was saying. So why would we expect internal audit to stay the same after all these years? So we need to change along with businesses and make ourselves more agile and more effective and relevant and all of those things so that we can respond appropriately and help our businesses forward.
And just coming back to you then, Courtney, perhaps what do you feel are actually going to be the challenges, for example, for your organisation in terms of providing internal reporting over agile projects themselves and programs? And I think you use that paired programming approach that Guy mentioned.
Yeah, so remembering I've only been at Tyro for about 6 weeks now, but for any agile projects, the biggest challenges are relevance and time limits of delivering your report, and how are you challenging what you're doing in a way that's going to get things delivered to them more quickly. Is it a dashboard? Is it some other way, like the real-time reporting like I was talking about, that means that they're getting what they need when they need it, so that when they're going forward into the next sprint, that's something that they can use.
I would add to that point as well. I think just from my perspective, the businesses that we will be providing our recommendations to, I think will be generally open to the idea of the real-time dashboard reporting. I think for me the key challenge, certainly I see, is when we look to our senior stakeholders and the board audit committees. They're used to receiving an audit report. They see that as the deliverable. So to challenge that mindset, to say, well, actually, in fact, we don't actually need audit reports. We can actually report in various formats. It's not prescribed. I think that is actually where the challenge lies. And I think the other challenge is too, if we're reporting in sprint fashion, just so you're looking at a very large function within your business. If you're reporting in sprints and you're giving it's like narrow views on a control environment, at what point then do you take a step back to say, well, okay, well, I need to provide an executive summary or an overall opinion of a control environment, not just that sprint level view. So, like I said, I really I do agree with the dashboarding approach. It's very good for this timely feedback. I think we also need to balance it out with taking a step back and providing the helicopter view of that control environment.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We often, from our organisation, we have dashboards. So we have control status dashboards and we can see where everything's up to at a point in time. But our board wants to know, how's that changed? So being able to show the dashboard change from the last time that they looked at it has been a really useful piece of information for them as well.
Thanks. And I think then coming up out of that, what would you describe as really the barriers or delays in terms of getting to the agile work compared to traditional internal audit work? And I guess what I'm driving at here is that, as we've discussed, not all projects can be agile projects, and not all are fit the waterfall type of approach. How do we strike that balance and deal with any of those roadblocks, but also timeliness in terms of making agile work for internal audit?
So we actually trialled using more of an agile approach on the audit last year. And the approach that we did was more of a hybrid approach. We spent a long time up front doing the planning, getting large data requests and doing the risk assessment of the audit universe. And we tried the daily stand-ups. They worked to varying degrees of success. I think certainly my observations were there was some initial pushback at the time saying that it's a waste of time, or what are we achieving from this? So I think when you're putting some of these agile practices into place, it's about just making it work for your team, and no two teams are alike. So certainly reflecting on that experience, we could have probably changed the format that we had on that particular audit. But again, I think perhaps if you haven't tried an agile project, perhaps going for a hybrid approach initially, doing risk assessment up front and then executing the field work in more of an agile fashion. That's a suggestion. And again, I think if you just, with every audit, if you just look at the key lessons learned and see how you could potentially use agile to scale.
Can I just ask the audience that on the point on stand-ups, who is using daily stand-ups as part of the audit?
Is that nobody?
I think CBA does.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that CBA does. Weekly stand-ups? Yeah, but you guys want weekly? Yeah.
Perhaps then, Andrew, could you share with us that insight we said that stand-ups weren't quite working on that specific audit? What did you actually learn, or did you keep going back to stand-ups that didn't work?
No, we did. We can those particular daily stand-ups, and I think certainly on the IT audits that my team is running, we do it in a less formal fashion. I suppose because we all co-locate where we sit, it was literally turn our chairs around and have a chat, and we do that multiple times a day, and that seems to work for us. We don't need to take minutes and actions and run it like a committee. So I think that's probably where, in the past, it didn't work so much for us. I think that the key ideas, though, of saying, well, what am I achieving today? When you do your week in review, which I know what people do, they do their Monday, Friday catch-ups, and you just have dailies in between. So again, I think it's good to keep you on point for what you're going to deliver. And I think in audit, just again, personal experience, we're not front-facing to the business. If we don't deliver an audit report, exactly. Yeah. So, and again, I think we need to be more of a delivery mentality as a profession, and stand-ups, I think, can help change that mindset as to what am I going to achieve today, and when I turn on to my stand-up, can I tell people, yes, I did that, and what I did.
Yeah, and look, stand-ups don't generally have minutes. It really is just people talking about, this is what I'm going to do today, this is what I did yesterday. And if you've got nothing to say, then it's sort of like it does put you on the spot. And it makes you think about what am I actually going to do? How am I going to get that done? And then if there's things that are stopping you, what they are.
Yeah, just on the subject of roadblocks and things that you mentioned, I think as cliched as it sounds, you really need to get everyone embracing the change. I mean, I know in a past life I've had an audit partner who said, oh, you know, we need to be more efficient, let's try this agile thing. So we trialed it on an audit, but he still expected a report at the end and then sat on it for weeks before we got it out to the client. And, you know, it was about having that really frank discussion with him and saying, you know, if you wanted this, we need to be more agile to deliver this to the client. What can we do to change the way you're working to make you more agile and help us deliver in an agile way?
Does that play back to the culture of media?
Yeah, definitely. You need to get everyone on board with the culture and really have those tough conversations sometimes of, you know, how can we deliver this as a team?
And I just wanted to add my own observation here that often we're quite reflective as individuals and maybe more introverts than extroverts. I think there's probably a level of challenge perhaps in those daily stand-ups where we need to look for someone who's going to ask those tough questions and get to feel comfortable around how we're moving from going through a waterfall process to actually adding value to what we're doing every day.
Charlie, have you met some of the IT professionals? Like, do you think we're introverts?
I maybe you're the exception that breaks the rule.
No. I work with people who are extreme introverts. They're IT programmers, and they go into that so that they don't have to deal with people, and yet they do daily stand-ups. So it's not a reason.
No excuses. Yeah. Right, thank you. I'm just thinking about how, as a department and as teams and as a profession, we can influence and negotiate with management, line management, that is, second line, how we could work with senior management and audit committees and so on to overcome barriers around their expectations. Perhaps you could share your thoughts on that.
I think in my experience, it's been about engaging with your stakeholders early. So it's going to look different to them to what your normal audit looks like. And they need to know about that. So it might be a case of, you know, we're not going to ask for all of our information in one big lot. We're going to be asking for things throughout. And, you know, things like meetings. We might need to hold more little meetings along the way to make sure we're on track and we're getting things done. So setting those expectations, but then also telling them the benefits of how this is going to help them. So you get more relevant and timely information on what we're doing. It'll stop those, you know, those frantic bursts of activity and then radio silence sort of things that you get in a traditional audit.
Yeah, couldn't agree more actually. We're currently running an audit on our project delivery capability, and I thought we set our expectations fairly clearly up front. But then time and time throughout this audit, it's been a case of action. And when are the data requests going to stop? So I think it was a case of rebaselining our expectations at a few different points through that particular audit. And again, I think traditionally they're used to the data requests up front, interviews form done. It's the education of the stakeholders along the way. Although in saying that, in this particular example, once it's been explained that particular stakeholder has been quite receptive in regards to the stakeholder management at a board level, I might pass on to someone else to address that.
I think that a lot of the problems that I've had in internal audit have often resulted or been the result of a surprise. Management doesn't want surprises from us. They want to know as soon as we know. They don't want to, like, 3 months down the track to suddenly find that a control isn't working that they thought was working. They want to know now. So the more that we can provide them with real-time information as soon as we know, the less likely they are to be surprised. And I think that that's the real sell to them. The great part about a dashboard is that it's often designed to be clicked through so that they can delve into, well, why is that control red? Why have you called that ineffective? And you can go through and you can say, well, this is the control test we did. This is what your people told us. This is what the evidence shows. And they can follow it themselves.
Thanks. I'm just thinking now around our internal methodologies for internal audit and the day-to-day activities. What in your view, Guy, I'll start with you, what in your view are the areas which are most ripe for Agile?
Look, I think it's control testing. I think that's when we go out and we do tests with our customers, with our businesses, the area where we can really speed things up. We can giving them the feedback faster, giving them the information that they're looking for, and then being able to take their feedback and incorporate that into our next piece of work. I think that's where we get real benefit. I think that the reporting phase, the traditional reporting phase, negotiation phase, not so much. The overall planning of what you're going to cover during the year, but that control testing phase, I think that's where you get it all.
And probably on top of that, I'd say for the retrospectives as well. So, I mean, if you look at where I work in the insurance industry, two major functions are underwriting and claims management. And if we went into any one of those two areas, we could spend a whole year there. So it's a case of if we're going to audit such a large function such as that, how do we chunk it down? So sure, we can do our initial risk assessment and come up with our burn down as to what we can cover when. But then as you're going through the field work and controls testing, you complete a sprint to then look at the retrospective and take another look at your risk assessment to say, hey, actually, we seem to be finding a lot more control efficiencies over this area as opposed to over here. And then you can look back at your sprint burn down and say, well, actually, we might want to change the prioritization of the next couple of sprints to focus on areas that we would have looked at 3 months' time from now. So I think that's probably an effective use of Agile.
And if I can, just to translate for people who aren't familiar with burn down charts, for example, that's about showing progress rather than and value add. So it's how you measure how you're traveling rather than actually elapsed time. And also in terms of retrospectives, that's an interesting area for internal audit, perhaps in terms of quality assurance and improvement programs. You're trying to look back immediately and say, what could we do better, and understanding that sort of culture to implementing improvements as you go.
I was just going to second what was said about the bigger audits, definitely chunking those down, getting that done in a more effective way, but possibly also audit actions. When you're agreeing with management, start getting them to think agile in how they're going to fix these problems and come up with solutions. Because they'll often come up with this giant pie in the sky solution that takes forever and misses the due date and then it happens. So, if you're being agile, why not help them do the same sort of thing with their big projects?
Do it on management feedback. We'll come up with a plan.
And just, I'm happy to take questions from the audience, as I said at the start, and just my view also on the reporting of results, just to reassure you, in terms of actual reports, we were doing some thinking. We had a check-in with the Institute around standards, international professional practices framework and so on. In terms of the chief audit executive being required to communicate results, yes, that is the standard 2440, but that is a very broad standard. It's not prescriptive. So when we talk about what's our report, do we have to deliver those cards, some standard or rule or guideline? That's not actually the case. Having checked in with them, it is not prescriptive, even if your communication of a result is we were being agile, we were using that methodology, and we ended up with the skateboard or the scooter. So maybe a verbal outcome rather than a written report to the audit committee. That still fits within the broad framework. Any questions from the floor or any online? Right.
We do a summary at the end of the year, and we show our dashboard. And so we've got a control dashboard that we show, and that presented to the board.
What about the other organizations?
They may have a lot of considering that global organisation changes like Australia. So that's a big change.
Yeah, I guess as you said, IIA needs to probably drive that because people look at your standards, but they're worried they might not comply with your standards and therefore not move that much faster.
Do we have another question?
Yeah, okay, so open by default. We started as an organisation, 15 years ago. It was Mike and Scott basically said they don't want to work in a normal organisation, and so they wanted to share information. And as we got bigger, it was sort of like, actually, it's really hard to get things done if you don't share with people across your organisation. So we have an internal website, and it is everything is shared. There are some limitations on that, so I can't see what everybody else's salary is, as an example. But I can see what other teams are working on. I can see that if somebody's writing a blog, I can see that they're writing that blog. I can see a lot of more information. Now, we did an acquisition last year. We bought Trello, which is another company. I couldn't see that information in that space that I can't see. But if I wanted to see if somebody is doing some piece of work, it's open. And it was really difficult for me joining the organisation because I'm so used to I'd work on a page and it'd be restricted, and then when I was happy with it, I'd open it up. And I got comments from people like, "Why is this page restricted?" I'm going, "Well, I'm working on it." And they go, "Like, so what?" Yep. So all of the audits. So as we're doing control testing, the status is on the dashboard the minute the control is updated.
How do you identify, for example, there's efficiency in the temporary dashboard?
Goes up in the dashboard.
So
There's no filter.
No,
it's real time.
How does the discussion happen about what's the dashboard?
Well, you define the dashboard up front to say these are the controls that we're testing. This is you start with the risk and controls, and so you go, this is the risk we're running. These are the controls we've got. A lot of the stuff that I do is in the IT space, and so there's sort of if anybody comes up with something amazingly different from a standard set of IT controls, I'd be very surprised. We've got 22, they're pretty much standard across the industry. We then think about what are the control activities, and it's where that control activity is falling down, that flows through the control objective, and it's real time.
So the discussion requires in case one doesn't
that discussion happens before it gets updated. So it's part of the testing.
Okay.
If you're going to make an assessment of the results of a test, you need to say, well, this is why I think it's failed, and you'd have that conversation with the person that you're auditing to say, well, this is why I think it's failed, and they go, oh, I've got the hidden control, or oh, there's this other piece of documentation, or whatever. But a lot of the cases, if you're looking at the control design, then that's where you're really doing your assessment of whether this is a good control or not. That's more conversation. When you're doing OE testing, it's either a pass or a fail because it's the signature's there or it's not.
Deborah, thank you for waiting patiently.
I wanted to ask you tips in relation to getting the right level of detail into stand-ups. So I've certainly had the introductory team conference with stand-ups and getting people to say enough, particularly around issues, challenges, blockers, just getting people, whether they're introverted or not, to pipe up and stand up is an initial challenge. But on the other extreme, you can actually have done these stand-ups going for too long, getting far too much detail, etc. So I'd be really interested in any observations and tips around that.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, look, I think we've all got the person who won't say anything, and then you've got the other person who won't shut up. Yeah, I think that's where giving people candid feedback on, look, your update, there's too much stuff in it. You didn't do all that stuff yesterday. Or there's, let's keep it short. We're trying to get through this so that we can get back and do some real work. I think that's, that sort of feedback that, anybody in the team can give to that team member. If you're really not hearing from somebody though, just say, and we hand around a token. So it's like you hold the thing, and while you've got the thing, you talk about what you did. And we've had situations where we give the person, who doesn't say anything, they get the token, and they're sort of like, nobody else will take the token from them until they've said enough. And so, the teams, because they're taking ownership, because they're self-organising, they start to build that behaviour themselves, and people want to share yesterday, and particularly if it's something that they've worked hard on.
I guess the clarifier around the ones that go too long can actually be a team behaviour of all piling in and trying to solve the problem, and then finding 15 minutes later actually we haven't talked about anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's where you go. That's a problem we're trying to solve. This is stand up. That's a different thing. Take it off.
Would you recommend a 2-minute egg timer for the token?
No, I wouldn't, because sometimes there's people who they want to talk about something, but then other people really want to know more about it. And so we actually have in some of our meetings we have a chicken. We have a rubber chicken that you squeeze it and it squawks. And so people will go, no, people do it wrong. Just call it chicken.
Yeah, questions, probably more tips. If you look at the spectrum of internal audit, you get compliance testing on the one end, you get valued business advisor on the other end. What's your tips for using the Agile methodology more towards that advisor? So if you say your controls are working or not, that's fine, that's your answer, but here's other things that you can do. How do you do that sort of timely as well? That's not in an audit report, rather than that just the dashboard.
I have tried to do, a couple of those more advisory sort of pieces, and it's more, you take the focus off the controls and go, okay, holistically, what is the process I want to look at? What do I want to achieve in this sprint? I want to assess this and provide advice on this, and it's just a matter of trying to take those same concepts and work them in there.
I think about when we first thought about a control set, and we didn't actually have to comply with anything. So we weren't US listed, we didn't have to do SOC 2 reports, we didn't have to do any of the ISO controls for privacy. We were like cowboys, it was great fun. But I worked for a guy we know that in the future we're going to have to. So how are we going to design these controls in a way that the business doesn't get slowed down? And that became advice. And that was, okay, let's go and talk to this business about how they do this piece of work. What are the things we worry about? How are they going to control that risk? And we would go out and we talk to them. And it was like, okay, well, this is this piece of information. And then we go, well, actually, this team really hasn't thought this much about it. Let's leave them with some seed ideas. And then we go and talk to another team.
Len.
Just a couple of questions to Guy, particularly to the panel as well, about interface with audit committee. And I'm presuming you have independent members you work with?
Yes, we do. So we've got now we're a bit of an oddball. So Mike and Scott started the company, and so we've got two founders who are also co-CEOs, and then they went and hired the board, as opposed to the board hiring the CEOs. I'm just going to take a quick funny story about that. Mike said he was sitting at one of these board meetings, and they were asking him some really hard questions, and he's going, "Oh shit, what am I going to do? I don't know the answer to that." And he thought, "Hang on a second, I hired these people. If I don't know the answer, why am I trying to make it up as I go along? I'll just ask them. Like, well, I don't know the answer, so what should it be?" And then they workshopped it to come up with the idea. So yes, we have independent people, and they come in and they ask questions. And we have an overall head of risk and compliance who presents to that team, to that board audit committee, and gives an update on the testing that we've been doing. But we use the dashboards, and they have access to the dashboards all the time, so they can see.
That's very useful. So you're seeing the changes in the dashboards, I think, which is quite important.
Yeah. Seeing progression over time helps them understand whether your business is getting better or worse.
Yeah. But the issue, and I'm an independent on an audit committee, the issue is you meet on an interval basis, and there's an expectation at a certain point. And if you're then saying, no, actually I want to have more real-time engagement, then what you're doing is independent. There's a bit of...
You start becoming management, don't you?
Well, that's I do it just because of my personality, I guess. What's going on, you tell me, I don't know too much, and you educate me. But it's a case of, what the balance is. I guess my question really is, what's the balance you strike? Because I think what you're doing is fascinating. I really would like to do a lot more actively from the point of view. But it's a case of how do you strike that balance, particularly when you look at the themes and you look at the meta.
The guy, I can remember when I was Macquarie Bank, I used to worry about themes all the time, and we'd interact with APRA, and they'd go, an issue, and we'd go, yeah, actually, I think you're right, or no, and this is why. And you do need to take that step back on a regular basis to go, what am I seeing? But I think that the dashboard, and particularly the progression over time of your dashboard, helps you with that thematic analysis, being able to break those controls into groupings. So effectively have a theme for the control to then say, actually, my change management theme is amber. Why? I think it's the why that you really want to get to the bottom.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm just conscious of time, and lunch has now arrived. I want to allow you all time to network and chat more about this. And I think we've got enough material that we could actually have another session or go on most of the afternoon. So very interested to hear your feedback. But if I may, can I just ask for one sort of takeaway in terms of sticking points that maybe you've come across, and what your next doing is, what your next action is to help progress towards a more agile approach for your internal audit teams.
So within Allianz, I suppose what I've been recommending and pushing is that we actually in Guy's presentation he said start on a small audit. Totally agree. So can we start implementing incremental change on a small audit? So could we potentially taking a step back? Our methodology is very descriptive. It's very group driven, but in saying that, it doesn't mean we can't do additional things on top of what our head office requires. So could we implement a dashboarding system on top of the final report? Can we continue evolving our stand-ups? Yes, of course we can do all that. Can we communicate to management our findings in a more timely basis? Yes, of course we can. So I think it's just a case of, with every audit, cherry-picking the audits that we want to trial those things on and giving it a go and seeing how it worked and seeing how we can modify it next time around.
Yeah, I think a big sticking point is that people don't like change generally. So getting them on board with things, I mean, if all of you left here and went running around the halls back at your businesses going, we're going agile, most of you would fail. It's a case of, you've got to show people the benefits before they'll get on board. You can't just bang on about it and say we're all going agile because that's the way to go. So yeah, start small, start trialing in some areas and even just start introducing stand-ups and things like that, small things you can do to get people used to the idea, and it will sort of slowly slip into the culture.
I think the other thing is look for an area of your business that is undergoing a lot of change itself, or is being impacted by the environment changing, because they're the ones who are going to have to adapt. And I think agile and being agile is about being able to adapt to change. So aligning with those businesses is going to give you the best chance of success.
Great, thank you very much. And I just wanted to very quickly, any councillors here from New South Wales, please just a show of hands. So we have Rizwana, Jared, Chris. So those are our three councillors and myself. Please talk to us, give us feedback on the session. But without further ado, I'll close the session and offer you lunch. But thank you very much to Guy from Atlassian, Guy Herbert, Courtney Fox from Tyro Payments, and Andrew McKay from Allianz.
Thank you, Charlie. And also on behalf of the New South Wales chapter, I would like to thank you, Guy. And thank you for your time, Andrew. I don't know what it is.
These are wine coolers. We haven't actually got wine for lunch.
No.
Worst luck.
And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.